going here. All right. So how to become a CFRE, that's what we're all here for today, to learn how to do that and hopefully save you some time and avoid some pitfalls and all of that. I'm happy to be here. And as we go along, feel free, we're going to have a couple of breaks for questions. So if something pops up along the way, jot that down or put it in the chat or just hang on to it and we'll hit it at one of those breaks. And then at the end, I'll stay for as long as you need me and answer, any questions that you have. So let's dive in and let's talk about what is the CFRE. So we began in 1981. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. There was no cake. I was pretty disappointed about that. And of course, we're all separated because of COVID, but you'd think 40 years of an organization, there'd be a cake somewhere, right? But I'm still waiting on that. So initially we were, created out of an idea between AFP, AHP, and a couple other organizations that were concerned with having some sort of third-party validation for or credential for fundraisers. And that was the idea behind it. Fast forward 40 years later, there's 7,500 CFREs worldwide. We're an international credential. And the promise or the purpose of becoming a CFRE is to say that, that you are committing to ethical best practice fundraising. And as I mentioned, it's international. We are the only accredited, globally recognized fundraising certification for fundraisers. So why do you want to become a CFRE? So we've, done polls, talked to different people. Of course, we know why we would think that you should become a CFRE, obviously, but we always want to listen to what organizations say. And AFP and a few other organizations have done different research, either for us or independent of us, and they've come up with, improving your fundraising knowledge, becoming a more valuable asset to your organization, and demonstrating your fundraising knowledge to your peers, your colleagues, donors, and whatnot. Those tend to be the things that people really focus on when they tell us why they want to become a CFRE. What are the benefits? Again, these are from surveys that we've done both with Chronicled Philanthropy and AFP. People who've achieved their CFRE report that 83% of them report that it had a positive impact on their earning potential. 90% say it's enhanced their access to professional opportunities. So the kinds of jobs that you can even apply for or attain tend to improve with the credential. And 92% report that they have better on-the-job confidence. And where that stems through is the extensive, rigorous process that it takes to prepare and sit for the exam. You're becoming more and more knowledgeable about your profession, and more knowledge increases your confidence over time. So another great benefit for pursuing the credential. AFP, their compensation and benefits report said that CFREs earn on average 10 to 25% more than their non-certified colleagues. So again, an additional benefit. So right here, we're going to pause, and I want to see, I think we have, I'm not sure the total number of folks we have on right now, it's 27. And we're going to do a quick poll, and we're going to see how many of you have started the application process. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to hit that. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, looks like a couple of, maybe one, only one person has started the application. That's good. Then this
and I
will
can
all be
vouch.
new. Go
Jeff,
ahead.
I can vouch I've started mine. I just can't vote for myself. So make that two people have started.
All right. Well, that's a good thing though, because the next few slides are going to be really relevant to you and kind of help walk you through that process. So let's take a look. So the easiest thing to do to get started is to start the application and create an account. That's what you're really doing to get going, is creating an account. A lot of times I've seen other certification organizations, and when you start to fill this stuff out, they immediately want you to lock into a test window and say, when you're going to do that and pay your money. That's not how we do it. We just want you to create an account, start logging your education that you've done over time. It's so much easier to log your education as you go, as opposed to getting ready to sit for the exam and then trying to figure out, what was that conference I took 3 years ago in Chicago? How many points was that worth? So doing it along the way, it makes it so much easier. So a couple places where you can see where to log in. The little arrows are going to pop up there and show you. It's really simple to do. Just start to enter information. As I said, it doesn't lock you into a test window, and you can have that open application for years if need be. So, but it's important just to get that going. One of the other really great benefits of going ahead and creating your account, though, is you get access immediately to CFRE Central, which is our online community. So you will have access to the open forum. Once you become a CFRE, then you'll have access to the CFRE only forum as well. But you're not missing out on a whole lot by not having that one, because I can tell you the open forum is much more active, even so. But we also have quarterly Ask Me Anythings. We'll bring in an expert into the CFRE Central community and these are free to do, and they'll answer questions. So if any of you are familiar with N10 and Ash Shepard, the CEO, we had him as one of our experts. We did a crisis communications one about a year ago that was really well attended. We did one on creating your annual fundraising plan with Jeff Bagel. That was a really good one. So getting that into that community, even for just simple daily things like, hey, I need a new direct mail vendor, who have you used? You can post those kinds of questions. So all of that is a benefit to getting started with your application. Now, there are three categories that you're going to be measured on when you complete your application. It's going to be education, will be the first one, and we'll break down how you can earn those 80 points. So you'll have to have earned 80 points in the previous 5 years for your initial application. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. First, with continuing education, workshops, webinars, things like that. Attending one of these is worth a point, and that has to be at least 45 minutes. You can get 2 points if you're a presenter, and you can get 3 points if you're presenting brand new material for the first time. Up to 36 points maximum can come from presenting. So you still have to do, that doesn't get you out of doing webinars and education on your own, just presenting. But you can earn quite a few points that way. The other way that you can earn points is with your academic degrees. You do not have to have a degree to sit for the CFRE exam. I want to make that upfront clear. It's not a requirement at all, but if you do, you're going to get points towards that 80 points that you need to sit for the exam. So 10 points for bachelor's, master's, etc. Associate's degrees will count for 5. In addition to that, you can earn points for service learning. So you can earn for 1 point per organization as a volunteer, and 2 points per organization per year for serving on the board or on a committee. So just another avenue to do that. On your initial application, you can earn up to 10 points maximum for non-fundraising education. Okay. And things like management, leadership, things that we're going to tie back to your fundraising success. And the reason why you see a box of chocolates there is someone actually listed on their application a chocolate making course. Obviously, that did not count. So it does have to be relevant to the job, but we do allow up to 10 points. On a recertification application, you can have up to 5 points of non-fundraising education. So some of the things, some of the ways in which you can do this, again, webinars, lunch and learns, obviously, you go to your AFP or AHP conference, those are going to be, big point builders. There's classes online, of course, academic courses, even if you've had a degree, if you go back and take a course at your local university, and of course, certificate courses. If you go to our website, there's a place called My Education Finder, and you can find, you can search by date, you can search by in-person or online, you can search by price, lots of different search criteria. We call it the Google for fundraising training. So if you're looking for how you're going to fill in those points, that's a great place to go and find resources.
And
One
hey,
thing
Jeff,
yeah,
one question from the chat
sure.
is how recent does this training have to be? Can it be from last year, the year before? Is there a cutoff?
5 years.
5 years,
Yeah, you
okay.
can go back 5 years. Good, very good
Yep.
question.
And do the things you participate in have to be publicized as giving CFRE credit to count?
They don't necessarily, and that is a good
Okay.
question, and it's a really good segue into this. We have approved providers listed on our website, and those are the ones you'll find in the My Education Finder. You don't have to use an approved provider for your education, but it will make it much, much easier for you in the application process to do it. Okay, especially if you get audited, because if you get audited and it's not an approved provider, you're going to have to show a lot more documentation on who presented, who sponsored the course, so, all that kind of information. You're going to have to document a lot more.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's an approved provider, we have them in our database. We know how many points that particular webinar or course was worth, and so that makes that process much easier.
Mhm. Oh, and
Also,
one point from the app for the Upper Maryland crowd, we have applied to get our fall conference as an approved provider for this year. We did it last year, and we're looking to do it again this year. So just another little plug for our fall conference for everyone on the line.
absolutely, absolutely. So APRA has a lot of different things that they submit, and definitely you want to take advantage of those. So yeah, we have, I want to say, close to 400 approved providers. We'll say anywhere from 290 to 350 that are active at any time. Sometimes we have some that fall off the radar, but I only say that to say that there is a wide variety of providers and education types, to match what your style is. So you should be able to fill out your education with what's there. But occasionally, yeah, you do find some training that you want to do that's not from an approved provider. That's okay. Just make sure you document as much as you can. So if you're going to say you're going to do a conference and it's not from an approved provider, just be sure to subtract out things like meals, networking time, reception, any sessions that you missed. So only count the time we were actually in an event. We had one recently where they had a morning yoga class before each of the courses, and we are not anti-yoga on any level. I want to say that, but you can't count that as education for the fundraising part. So just make sure that you're counting the stuff that's relevant to fundraising. So also about entering a conference, this gives you a look at the just a snapshot of what the form looks like currently. And when you're entering a conference, this is going to save you a lot of time. This little tip is that you don't have to enter every single session separately. So let's say you went to the APRA conference and you went to 12 different sessions. You don't have to enter all of those. Just enter the conference itself and the total points, and you're good to go. Okay. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to take a question break, and then we'll do a poll. So fire away.
Yeah, so it looks like the main one that's come in is I know a lot of people on this call, like me, we aren't frontline fundraisers. Um, just to confirm, like I shared back in the chat that, this is for anyone that works in fundraising. As long as you have that experience, then you can 100% apply. Do you have any specific guidelines for people that, aren't frontline fundraisers, or is that something that you might dig into further on?
We're going to hit a little bit on that. We want to see that you're at least 50% of the stuff that you do is in fundraising,
Hmm.
but also projects and things. We recognize that fundraising is a group activity, and that there may be a gala that gets put on, and lots of different people are involved. Let's say that gala raised $300,000. A lot of people contributed to, that, and you can put that up. We're going to talk about how much money you need to raise, so you could account that as well. So when you have if you have a specific question about your particular role, if it's not clear after the time we get done, or if I don't quite answer it right, I'll give you the be don't be afraid to call Paul or Christine on our team, and I can give you their contact information. They're happy to talk with you and help work through the process. That's what they're there for. So we can definitely help you, put you on a path so that you can put your application together in the best way possible to make it successful.
Hmm. Okay, I
Any
think
other
that is the
questions?
main. There was one specifically about prospect researchers becoming CFREs, and yes, you are 100% eligible. I think it's more well known for people who are frontline fundraisers, but we've definitely seen an increase in other people that work in the fundraising world. As Jeff mentioned, it's a team effort, and so anyone can become certified.
Yeah, and I think opinions are starting to change on who is a fundraiser. Um, and I don't get to set the rules for CFRE, but having been a development director for a long time, my opinion on that is pretty broad, to the point where I believe that the receptionist at our organization is a fundraiser. The receptionist is part of your development department. Now, I wouldn't say that wouldn't necessarily translate to CFRE, but it just, in my opinion, that this is a group effort, and the kind of discussions and marketing that you have to do is very
Hmm.
broad with any
Hmm.
department. So
Yeah, and here is an interesting question. Um, Ian mentions that, this seems like a lot of steps to get through, for a certification. What makes all this worth it beyond a possible pay increase or perceived legitimacy?
well, that's a very good question. The When we talked about confidence, the that confidence stems from having a broader knowledge of how to be a fundraiser. We know that on average, people in our industry tend to change jobs close to every 3 years. I haven't seen a more recent poll than that, but the last Chronicle of Philanthropy was somewhere in that range of about 3 years. Matter of fact, the first development director job I had, someone said, that the average lifespan was only 3 years. And I told my boss, we didn't tell me that. So the fact that you're going to change jobs some of you are going to change jobs several times over the course of your career. You're going to be in a big organization or a small organization. You're going to have to wear more hats than one. I bet a lot of people on this call have had to wear multiple hats, whether that means you had to do marketing, or whether you were doing research and the grant writer for your organization. The more you understand, and the more you know, and the other part of that, becoming a CFRE, is the recertification. So it's an ongoing commitment to understanding the best practices in the field, and committing to ethical fundraising. So I think the benefits are, I'm yes, I am biased towards the education side of things, because I've taught for the Indiana University, but I believe that in any profession, ongoing education, understanding, how your field is evolving, is invaluable.
Okay, that looks like the last question for the moment.
Okay. Well, we're going to do another poll, and and
Hmm.
I think we did it at the same
Oh,
time as the
yep,
other one.
it did.
How
So here,
long have,
I'll share
yeah,
results. Yep.
yeah. So we've got We've got a few people who are 0 to 3 years. Looks like the bulk of the people online today are between 0 to 3 and 4 and 5, and just a few that are a few over 15 years. So it's never too late. It's never too late to pursue the credential. So I'm kind of happy to see that that people are doing that. Okay, so let's look at the next area that you're going to be measured in, and that's professional practice. And what that looks like is over the previous 36 months, 3 years, or excuse me, over the previous 5 years that you have at least 36 months of fundraising experience. And the reason they do that 36 over past 5 years is they're acknowledging that there could be, maybe a gap for a different reason. We know COVID kind of threw some, curveballs at all of us. So that is taken into account. 1 month equals 1 point, and that's where they get to the 36 points. And at least 50% is what they're looking in fundraising. The next is professional performance, the third and final category. And we're looking at 55 points earned within the last 5 years. A point is equal to 25,000 US dollars. And I won't have to talk about any conversions today because I'm assuming everyone's in the US. So that's going to translate to 1.375 million. And when you look at things like events, you can report the gross. If you're securing grants, that includes that as well. And like I said before, we recognize that this is a team sport. If you're involved in a project or a gala or whatever that raises a certain amount of money, even though you weren't the sole person that was involved, you can still list that on your application. A few more notes about professional performance. You can also earn through management projects and communications projects, so that extends the opportunities or ways that you can reach that total. And for each project, you'll get 5 points. They have to have a start and an end date. It can't be some, ongoing campaign that never ends. And then with these projects, we're talking about the things that are on top of what you typically do week in, week out. And we have a list of examples on the website. So if you're a little bit fuzzy on this, what's going to work, what's not, there is a group of samples and explanation that goes deeper into this on the website for you. So as you, over the next few years, if you're kind of a ways away from putting this together, some of you, you may have all the points that you need now and could take it. So we recommend that you store, your documentation. You can keep a digital file, an email file folder, or however, or hard copies at home if you do printout. But just keep a place where ongoing it's easier for you to get to if you have a concern, if the person reviewing your application has questions, or if you get audited. I've mentioned auditing before. About 1 in 10. It's a random process. If you get audited, it's not personal. That's the one thing I want to stress. It's not about you. It's not personal. It's just part of the random process that we're required to do. We are ANSI accredited, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that up front. So we've been ANSI accredited for several years now. And there are guidelines that we have to follow in how we do things. So costs, let's talk about that. Initial certification, if you're a member of participating organization, that's like AFP, AHP, there's a whole list of them. And I know that a couple of your organizations are actually looking into that right now. So maybe by the time that you're ready to go, they may be one as well. So keep that in mind. The regular rate is $875. And you pay when you're ready to submit. So like I said, if you create an account today, you are not going to be paying that today. It's when you're ready to go submit and take the exam. So you'll have time for that. So what does that fee include? it includes your application review, and if there's questions, concerns, if they want you to make some changes, there's no cost to resubmit. It includes your digital badge, which can live on your LinkedIn profile and other places around the web. It includes all the testing fees. I'm going to break this down a little bit further, but we partner with Pearson VUE to administer the exam, and I'll show you where the locations are and what your different options are here in a few minutes. And then, of course, printing and mailing your certificates, which I think I said earlier, we're doing once a month because we only have that particular person in the office once a month right now because of COVID. So once again, let's take a question break and see what thoughts are stirring in your heads.
Looks like no questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about the test windows. So what's it going to look like when you get ready to do the test? So we have test windows. So you'll see that first line. If you wanted to take the test anytime between January 15th to March 15th of the year, the application would be January 15th. Now, then you're thinking of your head, well, what's it going to look like in 2022? It's going to look exactly like this. We never change the dates on the test windows, and we never change the dates on the application deadlines. Now, there have been a few times where we've extended maybe the application deadline for different reasons. Obviously, COVID caused us to make some changes to that, but the testing windows and the testing application dates always stay the same. One thing you might notice as you scroll down there is December is not on there at all. We do not offer the exam in December, and that is just come over years of understanding that how busy we are both professionally and personally in the months of December in this field. And so at this time, we do not offer the exam in December. Once you've submitted your application, you do have 1 year to select a test window. If you decide to change the testing window, there's a $35 fee. If that test change needs to be or is because of COVID, we are waiving the fee. I don't know what that will look like in 2022, but ever since we entered the pandemic, that's how we've approached that. And as I mentioned, you have 1 year to sit for the exam. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. What are you going to be tested over? What are we going to ask you about? Well, its primary breaks down to the 6 knowledge domains. You can see them here: current and prospective donor research, securing the gift, relationship building, volunteer involvement, leadership and management, ethics, accountability, and professionalism. Now you can see the number and percent of the exam, they're not equal. So those 2 in the middle, securing the gift and relationship building, there are going to be more questions about those topics, and a bigger percentage of the exam is going to come from those 2 topics than the others. But that if you feel that you're strong in one particular domain, don't neglect that in your preparation leading up to the exam. I've talked to a lot of people who have felt like they glossed over those areas that they knew really well too quick in the exam, and it came back to bite them. One thing that I can tell you as a little tip too is that in 2020, the area where people were the weakest, where they missed the most questions in 2020, was relationship building. And as you can see, that's the biggest section of the exam. Excuse me. So I think, and this is my own kind of anecdotal research at this point, that relationship building, when you dig into the test content outline, it tends to be the things that people feel like they do the most day-to-day stuff in, or that they have the most knowledge in. So it may just be that people are starting to neglect that in terms of what are the best practices, because they may not be always what you do day to day. The textbook best practices, and I understand that, but that's what you're being quizzed on. So good idea to kind of pay attention to that. I will not read this entire bit of text that you see on this slide. I would not do that to you, but I just want to show you this as a quick reference to what you'll see when you read the test content outline. You'll see the domain, and you'll see a list of tasks underneath that, and the percentage that you'll see on the exam. And then underneath that, you'll see the key knowledge areas, and that will help you with your study. So again, I won't read that text to you, but it just kind of helps you understand how this is organized. We have a resource reading list, which is comprised of about 30 books. We do not expect or even recommend that you read all 30 of those books. There are a couple of what I call encyclopedias of fundraising. Achieving Excellence in Fundraising is one of those. A book like that, and then one or two books from the areas where you feel like you have the least amount of experience, that would be my recommendation. And there's a couple of ways that you can attack this as well. You can borrow books, from people who've already taken the CFRE. Everyone, I mentioned CFRE Central, our community. Every once in a while, somebody will throw out a message on there. Hey, is anybody willing to sell or loan or give away their books if they've already passed? So keep that in mind. You can also talk to your employer about purchasing. There are some folks who've told us, hey, I went to my boss and asked them to help support me on this journey. And this is one thing that they offer to do, is buy some of the study materials that I'm going to need. If you join a study group, you can also kind of share the burden that way. Sometimes, different folks in the group will buy different books and then, trade as they do their test preparation. This is a tip that if you're into audiobooks, or if you think that you would absorb information that way better, every once in a while Audible will put Achieving Excellence on their free list to try to get people to do the trial sign up. So you can sometimes find Achieving Excellence free as an audiobook. So keep that in mind if that's one of the texts that you are interested in pursuing. Some of the additional resources that we have to prepare for the exam, we have our study guide. It's called the CFRE Exam Compass Study Guide. It's a companion to a course that we're going to be offering in 2022 as well, but it's been available for a couple years now. You can get it on Amazon. You can pick it up in any bookstore can order it if they don't have it on the shelf. So but with Amazon, you can either get a digital or a print copy. I, for one, if I'm studying, I need a print copy so I can write in the margins and take notes and do all that kind of stuff. But, everybody kind of has their own path in terms of how they study. Some other resources that we have are the practice exam. And the practice exam includes digital flashcards, if that's one way that you tend to learn well. The practice exam is a unique platform. It's not just a one-time thing that you jump on and do. It is a subscription base. So you can either subscribe for 30 days or 90 days, depending on how far out you're trying to take the exam. And it has a dashboard with red, yellow, and green lights. We all know what red, yellow, and green looks like when we're driving. But what it does is it tells you those in all 6 of the knowledge domains, when you take the practice exam, the feedback you will get, we'll say maybe in ethics and accountability, you got a green light, but in relationship building, you got a red, and securing the gift, you got a yellow. So that helps you understand where you need to prepare more, read more, study more, that kind of thing. You can also do custom quizzes. So if you say, I want to do a 20-question quiz on relationship building, you can set it up to do that. So there's a lot of customization that you can do. The one thing I will stress, please, if you don't get anything else out of this about the or the practice exam, these questions will not appear on the exam at all. They will not appear. So it does you no good to memorize the answers to these practice exam questions, because they will not appear on the real exam. These are just designed to help you understand where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and then create a study plan based on that. Okay. And so what is the actual exam itself like? When you sit down for the real thing, what's going to happen? Well, it's global, which means it's the same exam whether you're, in Indiana or whether you're in Brazil. So it's going to be the exact same exam. It's computer-based. We partner with Pearson VUE, and they are all across the world. They have locations where people take the exam. There are no country-specific questions. So you won't be tripped up by, what are the tax laws in Canada. It's written at a 5-year practice level, and there are 200 multiple choice questions. On each of those questions, and I'll show you one here in a second, you'll get 4 possible answers, and you're looking for the best answer and the best practice. What I tend to find that people who say that they didn't pass the exam, one of the first questions I ask is, how long did it take you? And a lot of times people will rush through, not read the whole question, not read all 4 of the possible answers, and they'll take the first one that kind of looks right and keep moving. And you can't do that. You got to read all of the answers, because there's some that may kind of look right, but there's always one that is the best practice. And that's not designed to trick anybody, but we've seen that happen where people read through too fast. So make sure, take your time, read through the whole question. So more details about what it's like. It's a 4-hour exam. And every question ties back to a point on that test content outline that I referred to earlier. You can move forwards and backwards. So if you have a question that you're stuck on, flag it and keep going, and you can go back to it. So don't let that, don't get locked up on something that you don't know. Just keep moving, flag it, and you can easily go back. The score ranges from 200 to 800, and a 500 is a passing score. There is a bizarre, I wouldn't say bizarre, a complicated, if you will, algorithm to the whole scoring thing. If you are one of those people that really are into math and that whole thing, there's a deep explanation on the website about the whole scoring thing. But for me, the best thing you need to know is 500 is passing, 500 gets you the credential, and you can move on from there. So let's take a breakdown of a question here. So when a donor, this is the format that you're going to see. When a donor wishes to make a planned gift bequest to the endowment fund, the fundraising officer should first, then you've got your possible answer. So that question, if you want to know the science behind multiple choice questions, the question itself is called the STEM, and the wrong answers are called the distractors, which I don't know why that just kind of makes me chuckle, the distractors. But so anybody who's reading through, who's got the answer? Anybody want to? 1, 2, or 3, or 4 in the chat. Teresa, you'll have to help me because I can't see the chat right now.
Okay, so looks like there's a lot of 2s
All right, you all
coming
are
up in
going
the
to do.
chat.
You're all going to do very well on the exam. Of course, yes, the correct answer is 2, and it's our job as fundraisers to, fulfill the goals and the aspirations of the prospective donor. So in the study guide itself, there's a group of questions with a breakdown and rationale of how they came to that question. So if that's the kind of thing that's really helpful for you, because I recognize everybody has different learning styles, that's something that you might want to check out, because it will break down the rationales. And once you see that, you kind of get a sense of, okay, now I know what I'm looking for, or how I need to approach these particular types of questions. You do have 2 exam options. I've talked about Pearson VUE and the physical locations. We do have what's called OnView. It's through them as well, and so there is an option to take it at home. I want to be very upfront about some of the differences, and then you decide, what you think is best for you. If you're in the physical test center, you can take breaks. You can get up for a water break and get up for a bathroom break. If you're doing it at home, you are monitored, you're on camera, just like you're monitored on the in-person, but you can't get up. So you got to be able to hold it for 4 hours, and you can't talk to anybody. There's a lot of, it's a lot more strict, I would say, on the home version. And the other thing that I want to say, obviously, the online version of the exam came about as a response to what was going on with COVID and lots of testing centers being closed, and people, wanting to be able to still get their within their testing window or whatever. One thing that we've discovered in this past year is that people who tend to be nervous test takers or have a high anxiety around test taking, believe it or not, are having a more difficult time with the online version of the test than the in-person. We're kind of waiting for Pearson to give us some feedback on to why that is. But I want to share that with you just to let you know, if you're trying to weigh between the two options, if you think you're falling into that category of, high anxiety, very nervous test taker, you might want to consider the in-person as an option, because we're finding that folks are having a different level of stress with that. So just want to be upfront and transparent and share that with you all, what we're learning. So if you're looking for a test location, if you're doing a physical location, you can go to pearsonview.com/CFRE, put in your zip code, and it'll pop up all the different locations and distances from where you're at to find a test center. Because of where you're currently located, there should be quite a few options for you. And when you finish, you will see immediately your score. And so you'll know that you've passed. Within 1 business day, you'll get an email confirmation. The scores will be emailed in 48 hours. Within 1 week, you can get a digital badge. And then, as I said, 1 month, the certificate, the physical certificate will come. Now, nobody on this call today is going to fail the exam. I have confidence in every single one of you, but for some crazy reason, somebody has to retake the exam. Here's what's going to happen. So they'll need to wait 30 days. There will be a fee. There'll be $375 to retake. You can retake up to 3 times on one initial application. And so our recommendation is to study thoroughly the first time. One of the other resources that I mentioned, or I didn't mention earlier, were study groups. I think I briefly touched on them, but there are quite a few study groups, and your local AFP chapter may have one. Your local APRA chapter may as well. There are online study groups, one that you can sign up on, CFRE Central. So there are options to study with a group of other people. So keep that in mind. So recertification, recertify every 3 years. There's no exam. Woohoo! Only have to do that nonsense 1 time. It's online, and then the fee is $408 for a participating organization, and $510 is the regular rate. As far as recertification, what you will be measured on are those 3 categories that we talked about before. Professional practice, 30 points, professional performance, 40, education, 45 points. And if you think about it, if you do like a monthly chapter meeting or whatever for 3 years, that's 36 points right there. So that's only 9 other points that you have to, fill in. So the 45 points in 3 years is pretty easy to get. And if you monitor My Education Finder, as I said, referenced earlier, you can find lots of free options, free webinars, to kind of fill in the gaps as well. So what's next? Start your application. Log in, start putting in information, start tracking your education points, and talk to your employer. See what kind of support they will give you. Some of you may already know, what's available, but sometimes there are things that maybe you're not aware of that maybe haven't been that HR hasn't maybe shared, or it's always good to ask, even if and just see if there's something. And I'll give you a stellar example as to why that's the case. When I was at the Salvation Army all those many years ago, we found out that there was a donor who had left an education endowment to our organization for employees, and somehow this had gotten forgotten. It had become forgotten with a line item in the budget, and it was a convoluted story, but basically there was like a 3-4 year gap before I got there where nobody even realized that this thing existed. And it was a pool of money that we immediately started sending people to the fundraising school to get the certificate, which is a great platform to then go for your CFRE. And we tapped into this thing. It was because we started asking questions and found something that people had forgotten. So ask those questions of your boss. And the next thing is questions. What questions do you have? I know I covered a lot of information in a short time. What would you like to know?
Here's actually a question for me because people are slow putting questions in the chat. Um, so that is, I know a lot of us on this call, you mentioned a lot of us on this call aren't actually frontline fundraisers. So there might be some categories such as as part of those 6 different areas that you mentioned that we might feel a little more uncertain with.
Mhm.
Um, are there any resources besides those 30 recommended reading things that you recommend we do to kind of really prepare in those categories we might be a little weaker with, whether that's securing the gift, or if people want to brush up on ethics that maybe, they haven't really thought about since they were onboarded at their organization. What would you really recommend for us to prepare in those areas?
Sure. There is a resource on the website with a study plan, and I would use that as kind of a way to map out what are those areas that you think you're weak at, and really identify those, and then take a look at the free webinars that are on My Education Finder, and try to take a few of those in that. But let's give a really concrete example. Let's say you haven't had any experience with capital campaigns, and it sounds a little intimidating, and you're not sure if you can answer a lot of questions on it. Um, Take a couple of webinars and look to see what kind of where are you lost at when you do that webinar, because you haven't, again, if it's one of the free ones that's listed there, you haven't put out any money yet. What are the things that trip you up? What are the things you're scratching your head, say, boy, I don't understand what that guy, woman, whoever is talking about? What are they doing? What does this mean? I don't understand what the uh, lead gift is, or fill in the blank. So once you've done that, then you got a sense of, okay, here's where I need to prepare differently, and then take a look at the resource list and say which one is going to help me fill in those gaps.
Mhm.
So I think it's about being, this is a place where um, you need to be as honest as you can with yourself about what you don't know. This isn't a place where you're trying to impress anybody, or fake it till you make it kind of thing. Just when you get ready to prepare for this, be really honest about, boy, I don't really know this area of the field of the fun, and go from there.
Mhm.
Because when you get through with this, you're going to really have a good working knowledge of it.
Here's a question from Jim.
Mhm.
He's asking whether you know of any free online test exams that we could take just to really try to get a flavor of what it's like, and whether, and probably not where we might score at the moment, but really just how to get a flavor of what the test is like, what the questions are like.
Sure. I don't know of any free one that's equivalent. of what the exam is. There's a site called Quizlet where I know people have put up questions and answers, and I think that has a free access. But as far as the quality of the questions, if they're at the same level as the ones on the exam, I don't know. Because like I said, it was a third party, so we didn't do it. So I'm not trying to steer you away from it. I'm just saying, if you do it, know that I can't guarantee that it's going to be as challenging as the questions. But as far as a free access to a free example, that would be the closest thing that I would know of. Unless, again, if your local AFP chapter, well, they're probably not going to run it for free, but if they do one of the review courses, you're going to see some questions there as well.
Okay, another question is whether you could share again that fee structure for taking the exam the exam and the application for the first time.
The fee structure, yeah, let me pull that back up for you. $1 million.
A sack full of money.
Yeah, one of the things, I will say this, it is a significant amount. And one time, we've been at, sorry, I'm scrolling back through. Okay, 700 for participating, 875 regular rate. People ask us about the cost, and in the research that we've done, in terms of a certification, we are right in the middle. In other words, other industry certifications are a lot more expensive. Some are a lot less, or a few are a lot less, but we're typically in the middle. But what I tell people, if you know somebody who works in a union shop, whether it's a relative, a parent, whatever, the average union dues in the United States are $400 a month, or excuse me, a year, $400 a year. So if you divide this out over the number of years that you're certified, this is actually cheaper than what most folks are paying in union dues every year. So if you want to think of it that way, I still think it's a really good investment.
And do you have any statistics about the percent of people who pass the test the first time?
That's a really good question. I wondered if we were going to get that one. Yes, 75% is the rate. I don't know what it is for 2021. I'll know, we'll know obviously at the end of the year. But yeah, 75% passing on the first time is about where it stayed pretty steady for the last 4 or 5 years.
Here's a slightly different question from BIM. They ask whether this certification, to your knowledge, counts for any academic certificate or any university degree. So kind of the opposite way around.
That is a really good question. We had, and I am not off the top of my head, I don't remember which university. Yes, we had a school tell us that they were going to, they were working on, was it Humber? Might have been one of the Canadian schools. Okay, let me back up. We've got about 30 universities that are approved providers, and they offer a variety of programs. Some are, working professional certificate kind of thing. Some are undergrad, graduate programs, things like that. Quite a few graduate programs. We've had at least one approach us and let us know that they were going to basically exempt, I want to say 2 first-year level courses, general fundraising kind of thing, from those people seeking that degree if they were CFREs, because in their minds, the rigorous education and experience that you have to go just to get should qualify for something. So if you want to shoot me an email, learn, LEARN at CFRE.org, for the person who asked the question, I will try to, off the top of my head, like I said, we have 400 providers, so sometimes they don't stick with me. But yes, there was a university that did tell us they were letting students opt out of at least 2 courses if they had their CFRE.
Okay, Christine has a question of where she can access that 30 recommended reading list. I'm trying to pull up the direct link from the website. I don't know if you
Um,
have it handy, which section of the CFRE website it's on.
Look under study aids.
Study aids. Okay, so here, I will put in the chat the actual website one.
Let me,
Not that.
um,
So there in
if
the
you,
chat, that there is the website. Let me go under
it
study
should be,
aids.
yeah, it should be the fourth, or
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, the third thing down under study aids.
Found it, the recommended reading list. I'll put that in the chat for everybody as well.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Under that as well, you'll see the link to the practice exam. There's the test content outline, a link to active study groups. I will say this, if you go to the website and look at study groups, know that that's not a comprehensive. Those are just the ones who have contacted us and say, hey, will you list those? We know that there are others that are going on in a variety of locations that they just, didn't bother to shoot us a note. So we're happy to post those for people, but they don't always do that.
Okay.
Mhm. Also under study aids, you'll find there's a study plan template. Um, and so yeah, there's a lot of good resources there.
Okay, that looks like the last of the questions in the chat. Oh, thanks, Joanna. Joanna just put in direct links to our upcoming events, everyone. So please, if you're free those days, come and join us. Registration is free. And as I mentioned, for our upcoming conference, we are applying to become a preferred CFRE credit provider for that conference. So that would make listing it on your application a little easier. Again, thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. This was very helpful. I know it answered a lot of questions that I had. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.